think, in the section on flattery, we're up to the fifth one, on page 402. Yes, that's it, because we finished off with the story about, if you remember, Reish Lakish, who was so careful to speak only to God-fearing, honest people in public, that anybody who he was seen speaking to was immediately relied upon by the community to do business with, because otherwise Reish Lakish would not have spoken to him in person, in public. And we just compared that to the fact that Rabbi Yochanan spoke to Reish Lakish when he himself was not doing the most illustrious type of things, and nevertheless was Makar from the Tshuva. One distinction I made was perhaps in one case is talking about speaking to the wicked person in public, and they're speaking to him in private.
Yeah, maybe people weren't around when
right.
He jumped in the river.
That's probably the case when he was sitting on the banks of the Jordan River. So anyway, let's continue on this page here. The Chamishi, the fifth type of forbidden flattery. And again, may these words of Torah be Lil Nishmas, the victims of the vicious terrorist attack that took place today in Har Nof, and as Refuah Shlema for those who are battling for recovery. So, Chamishi, the fifth form, Ish Shehu Ne'eman Be'enei Kol Ha'am, somebody who is reliable, trustworthy in the eyes of, bottom 4 too, in the eyes of all who hear him, V'umamid karovo liyos parnas o liyos rav, and this person appoints one of his relatives to be a supervisor or leader or rabbi of the community, V'omer alav, and he says about him, in haktiv shu hacham, I put this person in his position, I appointed him because of his wisdom, Ve'enoken, and he's not really that way. He's just doing for him favors based on their filial connection. And the people rely on this person, and therefore they go along with him. Or he says about somebody who he doesn't know, that he's reliable. And as a result, the people trust this person, and they deposits with him and things. And then the person who was speaking about and being praised by this other reliable person ends up reneging on the pledges. People are going to come to harm. The sage of blessed memory said in Sanhedrin, anybody who's responsible for appointing a judge who is not trustworthy, it's if he's planting a forbidden tree or a tree of forbidden idolatrous worship among Israel. Interesting, right? A tree looks innocuous. It looks like any other tree. The difference between this tree and any other tree is that this tree is worshipped as an idol. But if you look at the tree, you can't really distinguish. You can't make out any difference. A tree is a tree. Somebody who appoints a judge who's not fitting for that position is planting within the people a person who's supposed to be like a tree which provides fruit and shade and shelter in the law for the people, when in truth, it's not done properly at all. It's like, it's misleading, because the person is not going to be able to educate the Torah laws properly, and therefore it's like planting idolatry among the people. And if he places this person as a position of power over Torah scholars, it's even worse. It's as if he's placed not only this tree of idolatry, not only among the people, but actually on the Temple Mount, next to the altar. In the future, God will take retribution from those who placed him there. So that if you have, for example, a relative who you're thinking about putting in a particular position, and he's better than anybody else, of course you can take that relative because he's better than the other candidates at hand. If he's the same as others, he's equal. So all other things being equal, you can appoint this friend of yours or this relative for this position. It's permitted because he's no worse than anybody else and he's just as good. And if he's also relative, why not? Yeah. However, if it's going to look suspicious in people's eyes. This is like a judgment call, and some might make the argument that he's really not qualified, even though this person honestly thinks he is. He has to be open to the possibility that he might be misled into thinking that the person is qualified because he's a relative when he's really not. So he honestly does think the person is just as qualified as anybody else, but he's wrong. He's giving this person a favorable, right, giving him the benefit of the doubt, because he's being the relative. And therefore, it's possible that in such a case it would be better to refrain from doing that. Why? Because he's subjecting himself to suspicion. And if he's clearly less capable than other people, so you have to, yeah. Now
You have to be honest.
What's that?
You have to be honest.
Yeah.
You can't say he's better than others just because he's your relative.
Yeah, if you know he's not better than others, and he's not qualified. I mean, he might not have to be the best man for the job, although that's generally how things work. You generally choose the best person for the job. If one person is overqualified and this person is just qualified, so I don't know. It's not like you're taking somebody who's less qualified for the job. He's as qualified as anybody else for the job. He's just going against somebody who's overqualified.
So that's the same problem as if they were the same.
Yeah.
So someone might say that you're doing favoritism.
Yeah. Now, if the person who's overqualified because of his credentials will be asking for more of a salary, and the person who's properly qualified, your relative, will be taking less, then I said that would certainly seem to me grounds for choosing your relative at a lesser rate, as long as he's qualified, than the other person. Well, what if you have two electricians? The one you don't know, the other one you do know, and the one you do know is going to give you a lower price because he knows you. Right? Can you do that? Certainly. Right? Even if it's your relative. Right. But what if it's other people's money involved? In other words,
So you're just the middleman and you're still going to get the same amount.
Yeah, you're a middleman. Let's say you are part of the building council or whatever. And the owners association has decided that they want to paint the building. So now you're appointed to negotiate and choose a painter. And your uncle happens to be a painter. Yeah. And he's going to give the same price as anybody else. That's a problem. That's kind of like a problem. On the one hand, why not? Even if he's not giving any less, he's not taking any more, and he's just as qualified as anybody else out there to do the job. Why not? Problem is, he's getting the job because of the relationship. Now all of a sudden people are saying, maybe he's giving you a cut. Maybe you're going to get something else. So you like raise, you're susceptible, you expose yourself to suspicion. Yeah.
That's okay.
What? No. It gives you a price. The price is such and such, but he's not going to take from me. He's not going to take from me. Yeah, or the price is $5,000. Yeah, but people are going to say, fine, we're paying $5,000, but maybe he's giving him $500 back on the job. Or he says, I'll give it to you for $5,000. The job is worth $6,000. Everybody comes and gives an estimate for $6,000. And this guy's relative says $5,000. Right? All right, we'll take him for $5,000. But then people start saying, maybe he's getting a cut. Like I said, you suspect yourself to suspicion in these scenarios. I don't know what the right thing to do in this scenario is, but it's problematic. Others might say, look, if the same job is getting done, it's just being done for $5,000 instead of $6,000, and I'm paying even less than everybody else because I'm getting a certain amount. What difference does it make? Everybody's paying less and I'm getting more. But there's something unethical about that, no?
Seems like.
In other words, he's not giving it to you for $5,000. He's giving it to you for $4,500. So why should that $500,000 go to you?
So
it should be
everyone else is saving 1,000 and you're getting 500 more.
Yeah. As people say. It's not right. Your brother wants to do the job and he's paying you and he's giving you $500 back. So it's really $4,500, not $5,000.
So you have to be careful when you say what business your family's in.
So it's a problem, it becomes a problem. And then somebody hears, wait a minute, the painter's your brother? I have an uncle who's a painter.
Ooh.
Why are you your brother?
What makes your brother more qualified than
Yeah. So you're going to use your position as the head of the board to choose the painter because he's your brother and not my uncle, but I'm also a resident here and I pay fees like everybody else.
Conflict of interest.
Yeah, it can become a problem. So it seems to me in those scenarios it would be better just to say, family connections aside, we're treating somebody independent. Somebody's independent. Unless you get everybody's approval. But it becomes a problem. So I got in this situation, trying to do things for the building where I live, the Vadbait. And this guy wants his brother, and this one wants his uncle, and this one wants his aunt, and this one wants his sister, and this one wants his son-in-law. You go crazy. Everybody says he's better than him, he's better than him. Rabbi say, not him. I'm in charge here. I decide.
We'll get my cousin.
And it's not going to be anybody's relative, except for mine.
You do. But you were in charge. So
So I made an arbitrary decision that, it's a problem. So,
who'd you pick?
but it turns out that...
You never was going to win some and lose some.
Yeah.
But you have a decision you made.
So it was my position that nobody's relative.
No.
Yeah, no relatives. Relatives and friends. It's not right.
Yeah, you can do that.
It's not right.
Solve the problem.
Because then he complains. I also have a relative who can do it. Why his relative and not mine?
I know it.
And they said, how do you know he's not paying him? Or he's going to give him back? Or he's going to get business because he gives him business. So I want also to have to,
but still it's better to give it to a relative than foreign.
Whose relative? Whose relative?
All the Rabbis, my family too, they built the bells of shul here. So they gave it to a cousin, a second cousin of mine. He was the foreman. They gave it to him. His name is, because he's a relative of the bells. His name is Devere, whatever. He's relative to the
Look, it's, every situation is different. If you're...
he was the foreman of 200 carpenters.
Is that right?
Shul,
Wow. Really? Talking about the big show?
Yeah, the bells of shul. He said he built their own code or whatever.
Is that right?
It was under his...
If you have one balabais, so the balabais can decide. That's a different story.
Right, the Rabbi,
if it's just, you have one owner, one person in control, so he chooses who he wants. He can choose a relative if he wants. But we're talking about using public funds or using communal funds. That's what I was talking about, where it's not just your decision.
Yeah, in the Torah, you have a case of Moshe chose to choose.
Yeah.
He chose.
He didn't choose. Hashem told him to choose.
Right.
And nevertheless, people accused him. Yeah.
Of his name. He chose someone.
They nevertheless accused him of making the of course,
I have first choice and before him.
Yeah, he was higher up and closer too. Yeah.
But I'm saying, Rabbis do that.
So again, that's a different story. If it's your house that you want to paint, choose whatever painter you want. If it's your brother, you have every...
Next in line in Rabbis, in Hasidic Rabbi, like recently the Boston Rabbi was nifty. He didn't choose any. He had 5 sons, I think. He didn't choose. They all became rabbis, I think.
But again,
he didn't leave it in his will. Which one?
Right. So he chose to do it that way, but he certainly could have exercised the right to do so. And if he did so explicitly, then he had every right to do so. Whether people accept that or not is a different story. We know that when it comes to passing on dynasties, even when the Rebbe does say explicitly who he wants his successor to be, that's often not honored. Yeah, which is another reason why people choose not to say, but that's also problematic. But in any case, if you're the balabas, then you certainly have the right to decide who you want, and it makes sense you would choose your brother. You might rather not choose. It could be the opposite as well. You might rather not. You might rather your brother not do it. because you don't think he's the greatest painter. But he's your brother. What are you going to do? Not give him the job?
Then you get another problem.
Another problem.
Man, why did you tell me? I was going to do it.
Yeah.
So if I were in that situation that you were in,
What do you do?
I would have just done everything myself.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
Maybe
Again, that's a problem. If you're going to get paid,
That's really hard.
it's not your profession. People say, one thing to take a professional painter. You really should take my relative, but you?
Yeah.
That's even worse. It's definitely a problem. It's definitely a problem. Yeah. So that was my position. My position was that
No one does.
that nobody's relative should be involved. On the other hand, people say, what kind of business is that? If he's good and he gives a better price, then you're going to pay more because he's a non-relative. So I said, look, everybody can suggest whoever they want. I'm going to make the decision based on what I think is right. Combination of price and quality. And I ended up choosing one of the person's relatives. And since that day, the other guy won't talk to me.
There you go.
See?
Won't talk to me.
See? Wow. So you learn.
You pay a price. You always win and lose.
Because it's true. I mean, there's no point in paying more
Yeah, I know. Right.
because you don't know him, right? And so given I can see paying more if you think you're getting better quality, and you have to. It's a balance of how much more to pay based on how much better quality you assume you're going to get. Sometimes like they say, cheap, less is more. Cheap is expensive. So sometimes you make the decision it's worth paying more for this person's quality, or I'm getting more for my money, even if it's more than the other guy. But the person who's in charge is responsible to trying to make the most responsible decision. So it seemed to me that the first person for the job, all things included, was happened to have been one of the relatives of one of the homeowners.
Yes, this is very problematic. I can imagine like someone with having an ailment or something, and then you have like a relative who's a doctor. Whatever, he graduated like a year ago from medical school. He's learning. He's obviously not the best at everything. Hey, my cousin will take care of you.
Yeah,
could be a problem.
Yeah, the same thing. A lawyer, person's in a legal bind. My cousin's a lawyer, great lawyer, top. He's got a lot of promise. I mean, he's only been practicing for 3 months, but he's the best around. Among those people who've only been working for 3 months, I think you should let him, and he'll give you a good price. Yeah, and then that's how all these things go.
Making a referral though.
Yeah, making a referral. You're right. That's kind of a different. We're talking about appointing somebody. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about using your power to appoint somebody, and making sure that it's be a person who is generally qualified for the job, and not favoring, for whatever reason, a person who's not qualified for the job, particularly when it affects other people. If it only affects yourself, you have every right to do so. The sixth category now. Hashishi. Mi sheyesh biyado limchos ve'enu moiche ve'enu noisen lev al ma'aseh chatoim. A person who can rebuke others, and he does not pay attention to the transgressions that people do. Zeh davar karov l'chanifus. This is also like chanifus. He's not proactively flattering, but he is passively condoning the misbehavior of others. And that's a form of flattery. Because these sinners think, since nobody's rebuking us, and they're not challenging us, our deeds are good or okay. No, on the contrary, however, we were commanded to proactively uproot evil from our midst, and therefore you may not just turn a blind eye to these evil deeds and those evil doers, but you must rebuke them. Shenemar, it says, you shall destroy the evil in your midst. So that's another form of flattery.
So if you're like a top rabbi that everyone listens to, and then someone in the community doesn't keep Shabbat, does that mean you should say something?
Yeah. Even if you aren't the top rabbi, if you have some influence over this person, and even if, according to this, even if saying something is not necessarily going to have an influence, but other than the fact that you're making known...
Just because other people will see it.
Yeah. And also, for the reason he's giving here is if you don't say something, the person's going to think, well, since he doesn't disagree, he must agree to what I'm doing. So this was, look, I disagree with what you, for the record, that's wrong, even though you're not going to listen to me. Right? Even though it's not going to have any effect on the person whatsoever. But at least he makes a public rebuke, either a private, and then if that doesn't help, a public rebuke.
It's like a place where a lot of people go to get kosher food, but it's not really kosher.
Mm-hmm.
And the rabbi of the community doesn't, passes by the place and it's like, there's nothing I can do. Like that? That's wrong?
Yeah, yes, as the rabbi, as the rabbi of the community, and he, to the extent to which the rabbi of the community is responsible for communal affairs like the kosher food that's available for the community. If he feels like this is not kosher, he has to tell people. Yeah. There are two things. It's telling people to warn them, and also rebuking these people, if rebuke is necessary, is appropriate. It could be that they don't know any better. They know it's a Jewish neighborhood. People want to keep kosher. They're not themselves particularly observant, but it's an opportunity to make money. So they open up a kosher grocery store, and they do what they think to be kosher, but it's not really kosher. So the rabbi would say, "Listen, it's great that you want to provide kosher food for plenty kosher, but it's got to be kosher." So the rabbi, don't butt into our business. Don't tell us how to make money. This is our thing. So then, at that point, the rabbis tried to explain to them. They're not willing to listen. So then you would have to certainly let the community know, don't buy there, or only buy those things, or whatever he needs to say. I think we're still in the 6th, is that right?
Yeah.
The rabbis of blessed memory said, anybody who can effectively rebuke the members of his household and doesn't do so, Nitpas al anshe beso, he is held accountable and punished, therefore, because of the misdeeds of his family. Because he could have done something to prevent them, and he didn't. So now he's going to be held accountable for it. Banche iro, and the same thing applies for the members of his community, his city. Nitpas al anshe iro, he'll be responsible for their misdeeds. B'chol olam kulo, the entire world. Nitpas al kolam kulo, he's going to be held accountable for the misdeeds of the entire world. Shenemar, as it says, "V'koshlu ish b'achiv," that one will become ensnared because of his brother. V'darshu Rabbi Seinu Zichron L'Vrocha, the sage of blessed memory, explains in Sanhedrin Daf Chav Zayin, "Ish ba'avon achiv." A person can become punished through the transgression of his brother. Melamed shekol yisrael arevim zeh lezeh. Every Jew is interconnected one to the other. So, if you had a scenario where you could actually have an effect on the entire world, and you don't, so you would be held accountable for the transgressions of the entire world.
What if you don't?
If you don't have that influence, so then you're not responsible.
Because sometimes in your family, there's they might be doing something wrong, but then if you rebuke them, then it's just going to push them away from Judaism even more.
Yeah, so that's called that you can't really do anything.
So then, okay. Then in that case, it's actually...
Now, there are the two factors. There's the one factor of not saying anything, therefore giving them the impression that you tacitly approve of what they're doing. Right? That's one thing. There's another thing of rebuking so that you can actually do something about it. Here, he's talking about anybody who can rebuke them, meaning have a positive effect by rebuking them, and doesn't do so will be held accountable for the things that they did wrong. If he has no effect on them, he won't be held accountable for not rebuking them. In other words, he won't be held accountable for the transgressions that they do, because even if he said something, they'd still do it. So it's not like because he didn't tell them they did it, and therefore he's responsible for the actions. But the second component can still apply, which is he should rebuke just so that they know that he doesn't agree with what they're doing, even though it won't help at all. At least he's making it known. Right? Now, in that scenario, if he doesn't rebuke, it's wrong not to rebuke, but he's not going to be held accountable for their misdeeds because they would have done them anyway, even if he did rebuke. Okay, so there are the two components here. There's what rebuking prevents them from doing, and then there's the rebuke which just makes known that what they're doing is wrong. Let's do the seventh one. Hashvi, the seventh category, Haroyes Anshe Makomo, Am Kshoy Oref. He sees the people of his place are stiff-necked. V'omer b'libo, and he says in his heart to himself, Ulai lo yakshivu imochichem. Maybe they won't listen if I rebuke them. V'alken humonea milo yichicham. And therefore he refrains from rebuking them. Gam zechet. V'avano yiso. And there's also transgression for not rebuking, and he'll be held accountable for this. Ki lo nisa lahazir v'lo chiach, because he didn't try. Ulai yeshuvu. Maybe it would help. So again, he's talking about a case where he's not sure whether it would or wouldn't, so he doesn't. No, if you're not sure, meaning there is a chance that it would help, then you are required to say something. As opposed to if you know for sure it's not going to help, then you might not be required to say anything. And regarding this point, even completely righteous people were held accountable, they were punished during the destruction of the first temple. They could have rebuked and they didn't.
Oh yeah, it's one of the stories, one of the 3 stories, right?
Where? What was that?
About the...
Kamsa bar Kamsa?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. I guess that's what he's referring to. Here he's quoting the Kamsa bar Kamsa is in a different Gemara, I believe it was in Gittin. Here he's saying Shabbos, Gemara in Shabbos. So...
There are probably a lot of reasons.
Yeah. It might be referring to the same thing. However, if it is something, it's a well-known, established fact, it's already been investigated, looked into, and tried, that this transgressor will not listen to anything that anybody says, in terms of rebuking him, regarding such a person, don't rebuke the scoffer, lest he hate you. Yeah, meaning he's a scoffer, so he's not going to take your rebuke to heart at all. On the contrary, it might even strengthen his will to transgress. So there, one person is not required to say anything.
Would you be guilty if he does transgress even more or hate because of what you did? Is that a sin?
Yeah, I suppose so. If you know for sure from the outset that your rebuke is going to just incite him and cause him to do more damage, then I guess you would be wrong in that scenario to rebuke him.
I mean, to punish.
If you feel like it's not going to help at all, but at least he should know that I object to this, and he doesn't assume, doesn't anticipate, doesn't see any reasonable chance that he's going to become even worse as a result of that, and then he does so, and that is what happens, then I guess he wouldn't be held accountable because he knew he couldn't help, but he didn't think he could hurt, and at least he wanted to make known that he doesn't agree with this. And as a result, it causes more damage. So I guess if he wouldn't be held accountable for that unless people told him it was obvious to anybody that if you say something, it's going to be worse. And furthermore, the sage said, "Kashem shem mitzvah loymar davar shenishma." Just like it's a mitzvah to say something, some words of rebuke, which will be hearkened to. Kach mitzvah shelo lomar davar she'enu nishma. So it's a mitzvah not to say things which will not be heard. Even if it's just that they won't be heard, and not that it'll be even exacerbated and become worse, that's also reason not to say. V'omru mutav shu shogegin v'al yumei zeidim. Better that people are going to do it wrong without knowing that they're doing something wrong than that you rebuke them and they'll still do it wrong, but now it'll be intentionally, it'll be knowingly. Right? So that would be no scenario where it's better not to say anything. If you know they're going to listen, they're not going to listen, then better not say, such that they'll think that in other words, they're doing something wrong which they think by mistake is not wrong. But if you tell them it's wrong, you know they're going to do it anyway. So better not say. Better that they transgress by mistake than that once they know, they'll transgress wantonly by.
But I mean, they won't still know. No,
They might not understand or appreciate.
Yeah, people who don't keep Shabbat, no, they're not supposed to drive. It just doesn't make sense to them. It's but technically they don't know.
Yeah, that's true. But I think here it's talking about where a person really doesn't know. there is a qualification to this principle, which is mutav shishogim v'lo mezidin. That's only regarding things which are not explicit in the Torah, but prohibitions which are explicit and well known in the Torah, we don't say this. We don't say better that he be mistaken than he be done on purpose, because it's really not something that should be done by mistake anyway. It's something which is well known and publicized. Everybody knows transgressing the Shabbos is prohibited. Therefore, even if this person doesn't know, we shouldn't say, well, if he did know, he'd do it anyway, so he won't say. No, since everybody knows Shabbos is prohibited, you've got to say. So we don't always use this principle. Okay, let's end here. And we'll continue with the 8th condition next time we meet.